Welcome to the Vol Bros. My name is Evan. My brother Rustin will hopefully be joining us soon, but he is actually at his oldest daughter's school play tonight. She had a part in Pride and Prejudice, and so they're about to probably finish up the play as we're speaking. So he's going to head home, and if he gets home in time, he'll join us. We do understand that Tennessee plays in about 29 minutes. The basketball team plays in 29 minutes in the Bahamas against Virginia. And so we certainly don't want to compete with that. We want to watch it too. So we're going to be checking that out. So if Rustin gets home in time, he will join for a little bit before we go watch that basketball game. Welcome to the Vol Bros, presented by the Ultawa Club. I hit the actual wrong video when I started it. So here's what I meant to do a minute ago. Had actually sat in that booth right there tonight. Our family went over there and ate this evening. It was delicious. I strongly recommend the Little Walk Club. We certainly do appreciate them for sponsoring our show. They're very, very good to us, so we appreciate that. We got Mina Lackey joining us. Welcome, Mina Lackey. Good to see you. Like I said, Rustin will be joining us soon. So men's basketball plays tonight against Virginia in the Bahamas. Billy, welcome. Good to have you, buddy. Glad you're with me. And then Mississippi Vol said, good evening, Mr. Pierce. Hope your week has been good. Hey, absolutely, man. I'm alive. I'm got good health. Not in the hospital. Fortunate, man. Very fortunate. So I appreciate that. Hope it's been great for you too. Eric, good to have you, buddy. Welcome. Glad you're with me. Lady Vols basketball tearing it up on the recruiting trail right now. Second ranked class in the country. And their next game is not until next Tuesday. And so we won't, really won't get to talk about them until a week from tonight. Well, actually, no, that'd be Thanksgiving. So Rustin and I will talk about what we're going to do next week. We'll probably go live Wednesday if I had to guess. Eric said, we all need to pray for Big Vol Daddy. He's in the hospital right now, not doing well. Thank you for letting me know that. I certainly will pray for him. I absolutely will. Big Vol Daddy, if you get to watch this, we hope you wish you a speedy recovery, and that hope you do okay. Hope you're okay. Brennan, welcome, buddy. He said, been quiet lately, working and get the C10 running, but I've been here. Love the Vol Bros. Hey, we appreciate you, man. I love you too, man. Thank you very much. Bobby, welcome. He said, don't take it personal. We'll be jumping off when basketball comes on. Absolutely. I will be too. We're going to try to make this a 30-minute show so that we can watch the basketball game because they come on. CBS Sports Network is where that game is going to be played from the Bahamas. Now, Will, welcome, buddy. Good to have you. Let's see. Mississippi Vol said, hey, what about that? Lauren Hurst has joined Big Brother on the Hill. Coach Kim is building a strong foundation. No doubt about it. This recruiting class, that's incredible. She's been there, less than 8 months? She's been there less than 8 months, probably. What is this? November? She got hired in March. So 8 months. So she's been there 8 months. Man, just incredible what she's done on the recruiting trail. Absolutely incredible. Let's see here. Or I guess she got hired maybe in April. I can't remember. I'll have to go back and look. So, with that being said, let's talk some football. Really, we always talk about. Elijah, he said, "What's up, Evan? Like the hat? Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. Good to see you. Yeah, this hat is vintage blue as the color of it. I love it. I think it's a good looking hat." This weekend, Tennessee plays UTEP at 1:00. It's going to be weird seeing the sun out while they're playing. It's been pretty cool having all night games this year. But there's really only two things that I need to, we always start the show by saying, what do we want to see this Sunday or Saturday? Well, there's two things. One I'm going to read to you. One I'm going to put on the screen and show to you that I think tells the whole story for this weekend. And it's very, very simple. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a direct quote from Ward Manuel, the chair of the College Football Playoff Committee, the athletic director at Michigan. He was asked why Alabama, or how did they sort out having Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee the way they did with all those teams having beaten each other? How did they sort that out? And his answer was very, very telling. He said, I think the committee, we debated it, as I said earlier, quite a bit as it came down to how we saw those teams. Check this out. But they have beaten each other at different times. So we have to look at Alabama the last 3 games, which would have been the 3 games after Tennessee beat them. And he said, particularly the 2 before they played Mercer, they won in dominant fashion. And we were really impressed by their win at LSU 2 weeks ago. So that is a significant statement, because the chair of the College Football Playoff Committee straight up admitted that the eye test style points matter. He said, we have to look at the 2 games they played before Mercer. They won in dominant fashion. So the message that's being sent to college coaches straight from the College Football Playoff Committee all over, everywhere in the country, coaches now know you have to run up the score when you have the opportunity. You don't have a choice. Style points matter. So that matters this weekend. Style points matter. They matter a lot. Now, I'm going to put on the screen for you something that I think tells the other half of the story for this weekend. So let me share my screen here. All righty. So this is UTEP's schedule thus far this season, starting with the Nebraska game. Lost 40-17 to Nebraska. They lost 27-24 in overtime to the powerhouse of Southern Utah. They got beat by Liberty 28-10. So now that's 0-3. 0-4 after a loss to Colorado State, 27-17. 0-5 after a loss to Sam Houston, 41-21. Got blown out by Western Kentucky, 0-6. They actually did beat Florida International University 30-21, so now they're 1-6. But then turned around and got beat the next week by Louisiana Tech. So now 1-7. Got beat by Middle Tennessee State University, 1-8. And on November 9th, they had a bye week last week. Their last game was November 9th. In overtime, they beat Kennesaw State 43-35. So UTEP is 2-8 on the season with losses to Southern Utah and Louisiana Tech, blown out by Western Kentucky. So here's the thing. Now, to their credit, the head coach that was at Austin Peay last year is now at UTEP. So we know they're going to come in ready to, give it their all, no doubt about it. But based on this record and who they've lost to, and based on Ward Manuel saying that you have to have style points, I mean, you just have to. Here's what I want to see this weekend. I want to see Tennessee score more than 50 points and hold UTEP to less than 7. They do not need to let UTEP into the end zone. That's what I want to see this weekend, because style points matter. And now Tennessee needs every bit of help they can get. The other thing I want to see this weekend is I want to see Army beat Notre Dame. That's the other thing I want to see. Every Tennessee fan this weekend is also major fans of Army, because we need Notre Dame to lose. Somehow, even though Notre Dame lost at home to Northern Illinois, they are still ranked ahead of us. And so all that matters to the committee is wins and losses until there's the equal number of wins and losses, and then it's style points. Jared said, so you want another Kent State game? Absolutely. That is 100% what I want. Onside kick it in the first quarter again. That's what I want to see. The committee has made it known to everyone now. It matters how you win the game. The most important thing is that you win. That's all they care about, is win-loss column. But when teams are tied with losses, even if the team has the 106th strength of schedule, the tiebreaker then in their mind becomes style points, apparently. And we have to earn some style points here. Let me go back to some of the comments coming through here. Audrey said my blood pressure is automatically through the roof just mentioning Ward Manuel's name. Audrey, glad you're with me. Welcome. Will said, after yet another season injury to a starter on the offensive line, I can no longer guarantee an Ohio State manhandling of Indiana this Saturday. Ohio State still wins, though. So I would agree with you. I never thought Ohio State was going to manhandle in Indiana. I know a lot of people do think that. I don't. I think it will. I think Ohio State will win the game, but I think it is going to be a very close game, actually. So that's that. With your point there to the offensive lineman getting injured, that makes that even a closer game. The Wiseman, welcome, buddy. He said, "I'd like to see Florida beat Ole Miss." Absolutely, I would love to see Florida beat Ole Miss. I just don't think it's going to happen. So the reason I'm saying that we should all be Army fans is because there is a legit chance Army beats Notre Dame this weekend. I mean, it's a long shot, kind of, but I do think. I mean, it's certainly within reason that they could beat them. Absolutely. Jared said he thinks the Big Ten told Indiana and Ohio State to keep it close. You're actually probably right. That probably is a thing that has happened. Let's see. Ryan said, welcome, Ryan. Good to have you, buddy. He said, what's up, Evan? I want to see Brew get a touchdown on senior day. Amen. Amen. Can't believe he doesn't have one this season. I agree. I mean, it's shocking that he does not yet have a touchdown. I 100% agree. And I would love to see him get a touchdown this weekend as well. I would love that. Greg, you've asked a phenomenal question. Greg said, is the committee supposed to weigh home losses and road wins with more weight? That's a great question. Now, I think the strategic word that you use there, the key word that you use is supposed to. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody actually really knows what the committee is supposed to do. As far as I don't think they've actually ever released, here's really what we're trying to do in the criteria we use. That, and I think that's strategic by them, because then they can just, use their own criteria that they develop themselves. So we can't really. Audrey said they're supposed to weigh strength of schedule too, but they obviously don't, at least in the case of the Vols. Yeah, that's exactly right. We can't really speculate about what they're supposed to do. What we can do is we can look at what they have done and then draw conclusions from that. What they have done is made it very, very obvious. All they care about is the number in the loss column. That's it. That's all. They only care about the number in the loss column. If you have less of them, you're going to be ranked higher. Even if, okay, so Audrey just mentioned, strength of schedule. So let's use Tennessee as an example. Tennessee, Reed Carringer tweeted this out earlier today. Tennessee has the 18th ranked strength of schedule. There are only 2 teams in the top 15 in the college football playoff who have a more difficult strength of schedule than Tennessee, and that's Georgia and Alabama. And Tennessee's beat one of them, but yet Alabama's still ranked ahead of Tennessee. So in that situation, they didn't even take head-to-head into consideration, and they didn't take strength of schedule, win over a head-to-head opponent in strength of schedule. In that situation, I mean, we have demonstrable proof right now, just like we did in 2022. The college football playoff committee values style points more than they value head-to-head competition. If you're wondering how could he say that, I invite you to go back to Ward Manuel's comments this week, where he was asked how they ranked, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, since they've all beaten each other. And he said, we have to look at Alabama the last 3 games, particularly the 2 before they played Mercer. They won in dominant fashion. So they look at Alabama, say they won in dominant fashion. Even though Tennessee beat them, we're still going to rank them ahead of Tennessee. So we have verifiable proof now from the committee that number one criteria, how many losses do you have? Number two criteria, when those teams have similar, records, number two criteria is not head-to-head competition. It's style points, the eye test. That's how they're ranking the teams. So Tennessee has to put the foot on the gas pedal and not let off at all this weekend. It has to be a 50-point something win. It really does need to be. And I hate that. For, UTEP and their coaching staff. I hate that, but I mean they are a lamb being led to slaughter this weekend because they have to be. It's a shame, really. But that's where we are. The committee has made it known what they value. And so if you want to be in the playoff, you better do what they value. That's just the way it is. Let's see some of the other comments that came through. Rebel G, welcome, buddy. Good to have you. Hope you're feeling better, buddy. He said, we got to be temporarily be Ohio State, Army, and can't believe I'm saying this, Gator fans. Go Vols, go Big Orange. Yeah, I mean, Ohio State, it would very much benefit Tennessee for Ohio State to just annihilate Indiana. Sadly, I don't think that's going to happen. And the reason I say that is because if we look at Ohio State and Indiana, do they have a common opponent this season? Yes, they do. It's Nebraska. They both play Nebraska at home. Indiana beat Nebraska 56-7. Or maybe it's 52-7. It was 50-something to 7. Ohio State beat Nebraska at home 21-17. And it was a very close game late. So against a common opponent, Indiana played much better against Nebraska. Do I think Ohio State beats Indiana? I do. Do I think it's a very close game? Absolutely it is. I think it's going to be a one-possession game, personally. And I say that based off of how they played against a common opponent. Ryan said Rustin has been calling an Army win over Notre Dame all season. You're right, he has. He has predicted that for weeks now. And I certainly hope more than ever that he was correct. I really do. When you think about really this weekend, I mean, people have already said it. I think Rebel Jew just said it. The wise man said it. It would be wonderful for Tennessee this weekend, for Tennessee to win by 50-something points, for Florida to beat Ole Miss, for Army to beat Notre Dame, and Ohio State to blow out Indiana. That would be amazing. Sadly, for us, the only thing that I think really will happen for sure is that we're going to annihilate UTEP. Do I think Army will beat Notre Dame? Man, I hope so. I think that's the next second best shot we got, or second best shot at something happening. Do I think Florida will beat Ole Miss? No, I don't, sadly. Do I think Ohio State's going to blow out Indiana? No, I don't, sadly. But I think Ryan's right. Rustin's been calling it for weeks. And I hope that's exactly what happens, that Army just beat, not only, hey, listen, style points matter. So how you lose might matter. So not only do I hope Army beats Notre Dame, I hope they annihilate Notre Dame personally. Style points matter. Let's see here. JL said LSU had a horrible defense. Well, and apparently the committee rewarded Alabama anyway. Jared said, I know we're talking football, but how about Dalton Connect shooting the lights out? 37 points as a rookie. First rookie ever to go 37 points, 21 points within a 4-minute span, and make 9 threes from the field. First rookie ever to do that. All three of those, statistics. That's pretty cool. Greg said Penn State lost at home, Ole Miss lost at home, Notre Dame lost at home. Those should count very heavily. I agree, particularly since Ole Miss's loss at home was to Kentucky. That's a big deal. Notre Dame's loss at home was even worse. It was to Northern Illinois. That's a big deal. That is a big deal. Penn State, you can kind of see that one because they lost to Ohio State. So, I mean, you lose to the number 2 ranked team in the country, they cut you some slack there. And as if we're talking about style points, it was a very close game. You're down to the 1 yard line difference in the game. Notre Dame losing at home to Northern Illinois should be counting way more than it is right now. But it's not, because like we just said, you know what the playoff committee values the most? How many tally marks do you have in that loss column? Then when you start getting tied with other people, well then, okay, well now we'll look at style points. And that is proven to be their MO. Audrey said in the SEC championship game, it should be Texas and Bama. Texas is favored by Vegas to win. So does that third loss for Bama put them out? Fantastic question. And I think, yes, it actually 100% does put them out of the playoff. Honestly, that is the best case scenario for Tennessee. The best case scenario for Tennessee is assuming that there are no upsets this weekend, assuming that doesn't happen. Tennessee's best path to get in the playoff is for Texas and Bama to meet in the SEC championship game and Texas to beat Alabama. Alabama is then a 3-loss team. And hey, all that matters, number 1 criteria, how many tally marks you got in the loss column. And does recency bias play a role? 100% it does. I just, if people don't think that, just look at Georgia last year. They were undefeated going in the SEC championship game. They lose 1 game, and they went from number 1 to number 5 and dropped out of the playoff. Unreal. So in that situation, number 1 criteria, how many losses do you have? Bama would then have 3 losses and would have lost head-to-head to Tennessee. How in the world they could put Bama in over Tennessee at that point, I don't know. Based on the criteria they've used thus far. Unreal, man. Audrey made a good point. She said Florida State was undefeated 13-0 and they got left out. Yeah, you're exactly right. Why? Was it any metric on the field? No, it was subjective opinion about how they lost a quarterback. Clearly, the committee is very, very particular about style and what they perceive could potentially be how you play in the future based on your current roster. Like Florida State got left out because of perceived future performance. It's so subjective. JL said Alabama privilege. I mean, yeah. Yeah. I invite 2022. We beat them head to head. They were ranked ahead of us. Elijah said, I say just went out and we're in. And I sincerely hope you're right. But sadly, if everybody else just wins out, we're not in. That's what's sad right now. Because if everybody else just wins out, then here we are stuck as the first team out. So I wish it were that simple. I hope it is that simple. I just don't think it is. People say, well, Ohio State and Indiana are going to work itself out because they play each other this weekend. And Rustin will be and this is one thing Rustin and I don't agree on. Rustin says whoever loses that game is out of the playoff. I don't think so. Especially if it's a close game. If Indiana beats Ohio State, Kevin said, are we skipping the Vols basketball game? We're not. I'm actually going to wrap it up here in just a little bit. I want to see him play Virginia in the Bahamas. If Ohio State beats Indiana, both are 1-loss teams. If it's a close game, they're not going to drop Indiana out of the playoff because they only have 1 loss. And it's to the number 2 ranked team in the country. Now, if Ohio State beats them 60-something to 4, like 7 or something like that, then maybe. But if it's a close game, if it's even a 10-point game or less, there's no way Indiana's dropping out of the playoff. If Indiana beats Ohio State, now Ohio State has 2 losses. Would that drop them out of the playoff? I still think no. Because in that situation, who would Ohio State's 2 losses be to? The first one would be a 1-point loss at Oregon, the number 1 team in the country. The second would be a whatever how many point loss to Indiana, who at that point will be the number 2 ranked team in the country. So personally, I don't think, unless it's just a massacre, I do not think that the Indiana-Ohio State game will have any impact on either one of those teams dropping out of the playoff. That's just me personally, unless it's an absolute massacre. Audrey said Hunter's 7th ranked strength of schedule, but whatever, I guess we will have another game like Georgia versus TCU. Yeah, you're exactly right. 100%. I mean, yeah, exactly. Because the playoff committee has proven the number 1 criteria they look at is how many tally marks do you have in the loss column? That's all that matters to them. After that, then it goes to the eye test and style points. They literally admitted that this week. They didn't straight up say those words, but they essentially said those words because they said that the way Alabama won in a dominant fashion mattered more than a head-to-head result against Tennessee. Style points matter more than head-to-head results. It's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous. Let's see some of the other comments that came through. David, welcome, David. Good to have you. But he said, "What if Indiana beats them?" Yeah. So I'm glad you said that. I'm sorry I missed that. I'm glad I talked about it. Rebel G said that loss to Arkansas really hurt us. If we only had 1 loss to Georgia, it would have been a respectable loss and probably easily be in the top 5 right now. Yeah, you're exactly correct. 100% agree. 100% agree. What's even worse now, though, is that the committee is now saying that Texas's key wins were at Vanderbilt and at Arkansas, but our key losses were at Arkansas. I'm like, that's not how that works. If that's a key win for Texas, it should be a pretty good loss for us. It's unreal, the bias. I mean, it's just unreal. Ryan said committee also jumped Bama over Miami after their great win over Mercer. They love Bama. You're exactly right. For some reason, I don't know if somebody's got, scandalous photos about somebody else or what, but for whatever reason, Alabama is the playoff committee's darling. They are their darling, and it's been that way forever, seems like. Let's see. Rebel Juice said, "What if Texas A&M pulls the upset against Texas next week?" That would. So I have mixed feelings about this, and I'm glad you asked this question. As a Tennessee fan, I honestly don't know how I feel about it. When people are like, "What are you talking about? It'd be wonderful for Tennessee." Not necessarily. I'll explain what I mean. As a college football fan, I think it would be amazing because people love, they're like, bring on the chaos. Well, you want to talk about a chaos scenario? That's a chaos scenario because then if Texas A&M beats Texas and we assume that everybody else takes care of business the way they're supposed to, there would then be a 6-way tie for first place in the SEC. A 6-way tie. Okay, if that's the case, we talked about this last show. We'll do it again. Let me see. I probably still have it on here. So the first tiebreaker would be head-to-head competition. Let me see if I can find that article from the Sporting News that I showed last time. Yep, here we go. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again just so everybody can see this. This is the tiebreaker rules for the SEC that they will use this year to determine who gets to be in the it's not playoffs, excuse me, in the SEC championship game. All right, so Here we go. So this is the tiebreaker rules. Number one, head-to-head competition. But the problem is you would have 6 teams tied. They don't all play each other. In addition, the ones that have played each other, no one has more than 1 win. They've all beaten each other. So the first tiebreaker is null and void. Then you go to number 2 and number 3. Now, number 2 and number 3 both involve common opponents for all of those teams that are tied. Well, the problem is you'd have 6 teams that are all tied. None of them are there is not a single common opponent for all 6 teams. There is no team that all 6 teams have played. So number 2 and number 3, both of those are out, because number 3 is what was their record against those conference opponents. Well, there's not a single conference opponent. And step 3 is, okay, well, if they had the same record against their common conference opponents, how did they do against the highest ranked conference opponent? But since there's not a common conference opponent, you can't use either one of those. So now we're to step 4, and this is where it drives me crazy. This is, if I were an SEC team, I would be lobbying that this gets changed immediately before next season. Once you get to step 4, the tiebreaker rules now remove your team from the equation. And now it goes to other teams, the teams that you have played in conference. What is their average conference winning percentage? And the 2 teams that would have the opponent's highest conference winning percentage, they're the 2 teams that get to go. So if we play it out like this, let's just take a detour for a second. If Texas does end up beating Texas A&M, and they obviously will be in the SEC championship game, you would have a 5-way tie for second at that point. In that scenario, based on tiebreaker number 4, Alabama would get the tiebreaker because their opponent's conference winning percentage is 509. It's the highest opponent's conference winning percentage of the 5 ranked teams. Tennessee's is actually lowest. It's 3-something. So Alabama would then get the nod and go to the SEC championship game to play Texas. Now, I don't know what Texas's conference opponent's average winning percentage is, but if they were tied, here, I'll scroll down and show you, and I'll highlight it on the screen so you can see it. So if they were tied, obviously this doesn't include Texas that has Texas A&M, assuming that Texas beats Texas A&M. But unless Texas's opponents' conference winning percentage is higher than 451, the SEC championship game will be between Alabama and Georgia. It'll be a rematch of Alabama and Georgia. If Texas's conference opponents' average winning percentage is higher than 451, it'll be Alabama and Texas. But this is how bizarre, and this might show better than anything the flaw in this. Everybody look at this right here. Alabama, their conference opponent's conference winning percentage is 509. Georgia's is 451. Texas A&M is 442. So it's very, very close, very, very close with Georgia's. Now, here's the deal. Let's get real wild and crazy. When I said a 6-way tie, I assumed something that I didn't say that I should have said. If Texas A&M beats Auburn this weekend and then they beat Texas, they're in the SEC championship game because they would only have 1 conference loss. The 6-way tie, and I should have clarified this earlier, and I apologize about that. Some of you may have already told me this in the comments. I'll have to go look. Not seeing anybody saying it yet. So here's one thing that I didn't say that I should have said. In order for there to be a 6-way tie, Auburn has to beat A&M this weekend. So if Auburn beats A&M this weekend and then A&M beats Texas, that creates the 6-way tie for first. Now, here's where it gets absolutely stupid. Honestly, stupid. When you look at this tiebreaker that it would be forced to go to, the fourth tiebreaker, your conference opponents' average winning percentage. So what you do doesn't even matter anymore. It's what your opponents did against other teams in the conference. Here's where it gets just stupid. There would be a 6-way tie. So Texas A&M would need their conference opponents' average winning percentage to be the highest it can possibly be. But wait, if A&M beats Texas, Texas's average winning percentage goes down. Their Texas's winning percentage would go down, which means that A&M's opponents' average conference winning percentage would also go down. So in this tiebreaker scenario, Texas would actually end up hurting themselves by beating A&M would hurt themselves by beating Texas, because by beating Texas, they're lowering their conference opponent's average winning percentage, which negatively hurts them in the tiebreaker rule. How ridiculous is that? It's unreal, man. So A&M is in a no-win situation unless they just win out. A&M has to win out in order to make it to the SEC championship game. That's what they have to do. If they lose this week to Auburn, they're essentially out. Unless Texas's average opponent's winning percentage is like less than 400. And then if A&M beats them, it makes it even worse, which means A&M's average conference opponent's average winning percentage goes down, and it helps Texas because the more I think about this, the crazier it gets. Okay, so if A&M beats Texas, the tiebreaker rule would then negatively impact A&M because their conference opponent's average winning percentage just went down, and Texas, by Texas A&M beating Texas, it would help the tiebreaker for Texas because Texas A&M's winning percentage would go up. So Texas's conference opponent's average winning percentage would go up, which would push them ahead of potentially maybe even Georgia and get them into the SEC championship game. Oh my goodness. It's unreal, man. It's unreal. So this tiebreaker rule right here, it's a joke. It is a joke. So Texas A&M's path to the SEC championship game is they need to beat Auburn and then they need to beat Texas. If they don't do either one of those things, they're probably not getting in. If they lose to Auburn, they better hope that, and this is so sad. This is crazy. But if they lose to if they lose to Auburn, first of all, they have to beat Texas to even have a shot. And then they have to hope that every other conference opponent who Texas has played wins their last game of the season, so that no. They have to hope that every conference opponent they have played wins their last game of the season, and every conference opponent Texas has played loses their last game of the season, so that Texas A&M's average conference winning percentage can increase. No, that Texas A&M's opponents average, who's on first, what's on second, that Texas A&M's opponents average conference winning percentage increases. It's a mess, dude. It's a mess. So most likely scenario, assuming Texas beats Texas A&M, the SEC championship game will be Texas against Alabama. But if Auburn beats A&M and A&M beats Texas. Woo! Chaos ensues. Chaos ensues. And then you got to figure, and this is really what Rebel Jew is asking about, what would that do to the playoff? That really hurts Tennessee, in my opinion. That really hurts Tennessee. Because you have A&M sitting right outside the playoff right now. And if they go, if they go beat Texas, talk about style points. The committee's going to love that. We really need Army to beat Notre Dame this weekend. I keep going back to that. Bobby said the championship is a made-for-TV product. If we had our Heupel high-flying offense going, we were perceived as an exciting watch. Even with our record, we'd be in. They want eye candy. Yeah, Bobby's exactly right. Style points. He is exactly right. 100%. 100%. Tony said Georgia lost SEC championship last year and left out of playoffs. Georgia was one of the best teams. Alabama should be left out if they lose the SEC championship. Yeah, I agree. They'd have 3 losses. The wise man said I wouldn't be shocked if Bama slipped up at Oklahoma this weekend. Yeah, totally agree. I hope that happens. Go Sooners. Boomer Sooner this weekend. That's what we want. Boomer Sooner. Let's see. So JL said that the game before Tennessee is now in double overtime. Audrey let us know that too. So we got that was like 14 minutes ago. So sorry, I'm catching up on the comments now. That game's probably over by now. Let's see. Audrey said that scenario, if A&M beats Texas, would cause more trouble than it would fix. Absolutely. Oreo Puppy Dog said, need Notre Dame to lose. Amen. That's exactly what we need. That's exactly what we need. All Tennessee fans are huge Army fans this weekend. Kevin said the only game that can affect Tennessee besides our remaining games is Ole Miss and Florida. If Florida wins, there's a chance Ole Miss falls enough. Oh, yeah, for sure. Hey, I'm 100% on board that if Florida beats Ole Miss is out. Like, that's just the bottom line. Because Ole Miss really has no chance of making it to the SEC championship game. So they have to beat Florida, and then they have to beat Mississippi State. If they beat both of those teams, Ole Miss is in the playoff. If they lose to either one of those teams, they are out of the playoff. So Ole Miss is 100% in playoff elimination games the next 2 weeks. They just are. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they are in the playoff right now because they are playing to keep their season alive. Their playoff has started early. Absolutely. SEC football said if Tennessee beat Arkansas and did their job, we wouldn't have to worry about anything right now. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, 100%. 100% agree. Totally agree. Let's see. Swampy Gator said, as the Joker once said, I thrive in chaos. He said A&M has about as much chance as my Gators making the playoffs. I get that. Technically speaking, A&M can still get a first-round bye in the playoff. If A&M beats Texas, I'm going to assume A&M beats Auburn this weekend. For the purposes of, could Auburn beat them? Of course, sure. For the purposes of this conversation, let's assume they beat Auburn. And then they beat Texas. Then they are a conference one-loss team that they are going to play Alabama in the SEC championship game at that point. And if they beat Alabama, then not only are they in the playoff, they would get, in that situation, probably a first-round bye. Because I would assume at that point, the committee would have leapfrogged them over Boise State and the ACC champion. And so really, in that situation, A&M would end up being the two seed. Oregon, if everything shakes out the way it's currently looking, Oregon would end up being the 1 seed. The SEC champion would be the 2 seed. So A&M not only has a chance at making the playoffs, they have a chance at being the 2 seed in the playoff. That's the reality of the situation. Yeah, I already said that the playoff is already stupid, and the SEC championship tiebreaker is already stupid. David said, "How does Ole Miss have 2 more games?" Well, they play Florida this weekend, and then the Egg Bowl after that against Mississippi State. So they still have 2 more games. Let's see. Swampy Gator said, people who said SEC championship doesn't matter, I beg to differ, because if you're on the bubble like you guys are, but you win the championship game, you're in no matter what. Agreed, but it's interesting. Lane Kiffin actually said publicly this week what Rustin and I have been saying for months. And I'm sure all SEC coaches totally believe the same way. It's just Lane is the first one who actually said it out loud and in public. This week, Lane said that he had talked to the other 2-loss coaches in the SEC, and none of them want to play in the SEC championship game because it's not worth the risk. He's like, the potential reward of getting a first round bye is not worth the potential risk of being kicked out of the playoff altogether if you lose. You at least want to be in to have a shot at the national championship. So Rustin and I have been saying that for months, that the SEC championship game, you don't even want to be in it if you're one of these 2-loss SEC teams, because if you lose, you're definitely out. Well, not definitely, but more than likely out. Audrey said no one in the SEC wants to play in the championship game because that loss will be held against them. She's exactly right. Papa J said we got to win by 1.5 bunches. Amen, brother. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Let's see. When I say who's on first, what's on second, Audrey said, I don't know who's on third. That's exactly right. Let's see. Swampy Gator said, this guy's thinking about this a lot. That's right. I do every week. He's talking about the SEC championship breakdown. Rebel Juice said, so if A&M beats Texas, okay, and by a miracle, Oklahoma or Auburn beats Alabama. Okay, if Oklahoma or Auburn beats Bama, they're out. Like that, there's no way they can justify Bama getting in at that point, because they'd be a 3-loss SEC team that didn't even make it to the SEC championship game. They're out. And they lost a head-to-head to Tennessee. They have to be out at that point. He said Vols are surely in the playoffs, right? Or just pure craziness. No, I agree. In that situation, Tennessee has to be in. Unless hang on. Nope. Mm-mm. Because all we've done now is replace A&M for Alabama. How far would Texas drop? That becomes the question then. How far would Texas drop? Yeah. That would become the question then. Texas has not beaten a single team ranked in the top 25 right now. So in that situation, Tennessee's beaten Alabama. So in that situation, would they give Tennessee credit for that? My battered Vol syndrome says no, but I don't know. Let's see. David said, hope Kentucky beats Ole Miss this Florida. He said Ole Miss and not Ole Miss, Texas. Yeah, I mean, I would love for Kentucky to beat Texas. I just don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen. Kevin said this weekend he is a Sooner, a Gator, and an Army fan. Absolutely. Absolutely. It would be amazing if all 3 of those teams won. He said, oh, yeah, and Rambling Wreck. But that's next weekend. Georgia plays them next weekend. Let's see. Greg. Greg said, no one told me I'd have to root for the Gators. Not sure I have the strength. Yeah. Amen, brother. Amen. Amen. Let's see. Rustin just texted me, so he might be joining here in just a second. Oriole Puppy Dog said, did Arkansas hire Connor Stallions for the one game we played him? I understand, man. I understand. Audrey said Tennessee starts in about 30 minutes. Oh, good. So I'm not going to miss it. Let's see. So that'll be in about 10:15. I don't know what I said 2 minutes ago, but Audrey was trying to get my attention. Let's see. She said, holy moly, Texas' best win is Vandy, right? It is actually, yes. Texas's two best wins are Vanderbilt and Arkansas. Those are their two best wins. Whereas we've beaten Alabama. Absolutely. Kevin said Sankey will fix that risk. He's going to require at least two SEC bids for the teams in the championship game are both guaranteed bids. I think Kevin's hit the nail on the head. I think that is exactly what Greg Sankey's going to, try to lobby for and try to make sure that the SEC gets at least two teams in. Because honestly, if Bama doesn't get in because they lose in the SEC championship game and now a 3-loss team, can you imagine the outrage? That'd be 2 years in a row that the SEC championship game loser has been left out of the playoff. Kevin said we need Bama or Ole Miss to lose. Yeah, you're right. The wise man said things are going to change over the next couple of weeks. We just need to play our best game against Vanderbilt. Yeah, 100%, man. Totally agree. And we have to run it up on them too, because apparently that's what the committee values based on what they said this week. So style points matter. We have to win convincingly. We have to. O. Schmidt said, wouldn't Army just switch with Notre Dame? That's a good question. You could make the case because they're undefeated. Wouldn't that just leapfrog them up there? Audrey said no, because Army's 19th or 20th. I tend to agree with Audrey. I don't think they would jump quite that high. But if there's one thing that we've learned from the playoff committee, it is that they are creatures of the moment. That may be my favorite thing I've said all night long. The playoff committee are creatures of the moment. And if Army were to beat Notre Dame convincingly, I don't think that will happen. But if they did, then you might see Army jump up quite a bit, actually. Rebel Juice said we need Alex Golish back as offensive coordinator. If he was the OC, we would have ran the score up every game and no losses combined with this defense. Heupel's, he was calling the plays when Golish was here. He's still calling the plays now. I don't know. There's no way to know for sure. You're right. It could be, but there's no way to know. He said Army will then jump a lot since they have a top 10 win potentially. Audrey said, can you imagine the outrage of Tennessee being left out and Bama in when we have the head-to-head? Amen. It would be hearkening back to 2022, right? We beat them head-to-head, had the same record, and they were ranked ahead of us. Kevin said Army wouldn't just switch. The same bias that elevated Alabama, Notre Dame, Michigan, etc., holds Army down due to tradition. Kevin's exactly right. Tennessee would nice up farther than Army would, move up farther. Maybe. I hope. But you're right. I mean, there's a reason why Alabama and Notre Dame and Michigan get ranked so highly every year before the season even starts. And it's tradition, what they've done in the past, which shouldn't matter, but it does. Tony said, we only scored 30 against one SEC opponent this year. Don't think we can run the score up against anyone in the SEC. It's a fair point. Tony. That's why we have to this weekend against UTEP. Like I really feel sorry for UTEP, but we can't not beat them by 50 points this weekend. Like we have to. We don't have a choice. We have to get some style points and some street cred with the committee. We just have to. We do not have an option. Kevin said if the committee cares about outrage, FSU would have been in last year. They don't care. You're exactly right. 100%. 100%. So the second portion of our show on our preview shows is always who do we expect to have a big game this weekend? So my person that I expect to have a big game is Nico Iamaleava, because I think they're going to let him air it out. I think you're going to see tons and tons of deep shots because I think they know they have to score a ton of points this game. And so I think that, listen, UTEP is 2-8. They've lost to Southern Utah. They've lost. Their resume is really sad, actually. I think that you're going to let Tennessee they know they can air it out all they want to on first down. And if they don't get it, then they can still run the ball twice on second and third down and get a first down. And then they're going to air it out again on first down and keep taking deep shots all game long. When they're up by 40 something and start the fourth quarter and Gaston Moore comes in, they're going to let him keep throwing it deep. And so they're going to try to score as many points as they possibly can this week because they have to. They're in a situation where they can't not do that. They have to. Heupel knows that. The whole coaching staff knows that because they've seen this week, they've heard it straight from the College Football Playoff Committee, what the committee values. They legitimately value style points more than head-to-head results. They essentially said that this week. I will read you one more time Ward Manuel's statement about why Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee were ranked the way they were. He straight up said, we have to look at Alabama the last 3 games, particularly the 2, which, by the way, if they'd gone back 4 games, that's when Tennessee beat Alabama. But he said, particularly the 2 games they played before Mercer, they won in dominant fashion. And we were really impressed with their win at LSU 2 weeks ago. So even though Tennessee beat them head to head, even though that happened, they are more impressed with how Alabama won the last few weeks. That is why they ranked them ahead of Tennessee. Totally ignoring on-field result, head-to-head result. It was style points. That's why Tennessee has to score so much this weekend. For the 520 people joining us right now, y'all are awesome. We got people across all 3 platforms, X, YouTube, and Facebook. 520. That is amazing. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate that. Let's see. Kevin said he expects Dylan Sampson to have a big game this week. 175 yards, 3 touchdowns. Nico throw for 200 in the first half. I love it. Sign me up. Sign me up for that. Audrey said, guarantee you that the talking heads will talk about how classless Tennessee is for running up a score. You're exactly right. You are exactly right. 100% correct. But all we have to do is say, okay, we'll go tell the playoff committee about that and look at what they said about why Alabama is ranked as high as they are now. But you're right. I mean, people will be like, oh, they were just running up the score. And I hope somebody asks Josh Heupel about it. And I hope Heupel calls them out and says, well, we have to, based on what the playoff committee said. I'd love for that. That would be amazing. How cool would that be? He would never do it, but I'd love it if he did. But you're right, Audrey. You're exactly right. They will do that 100%. Jonathan said he expects Brew and Boo to be the players that we're talking about Sunday night after the game, Sunday night when we do our recap show. He expects those folks to be the people that we're talking about. Greg has fantastic advice. He says, hit the like button and subscribe. Greg, I think that's great advice. I would love it for everybody if you like this and subscribe to our channel. Share it with other folks. That would be amazing. Thank you. Greg, great advice, buddy. Great advice. Kevin said, I hate to be a naysayer, but the same way the committee says Arkansas is a quality win for Texas, but not a quality loss for Tennessee, they will say a dominant win against UTEP isn't the same for us. Yeah, you're probably exactly right. He said we must have a major win over Vandy. Totally agree. Totally agree. Audrey said, "I promise you, brew boo." Let's see that. I'm expecting, like Ryan said, for Brew to get his first touchdown of the season this weekend on Senior Day. Surely they're going to do that. O. Schmidt said the committee will have Bama over us because they have 2 top 25 wins, South Carolina and Georgia, versus 1 our 1 win over them. Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. Kevin said plus 20 over Vandy might give us a chance, especially this year. Yep, and let's hope Army beats Notre Dame. Mississippi Vol said, I would love to see Ricky Gibson III come down with his first pick this year. I'd love to see that too, man. I would love it. Absolutely. So now we're going to do score predictions. So let me know in the comments what your score prediction for Tennessee UTEP is this weekend. I'll be happy to put it on the screen. My score prediction is 56-6 Tennessee. I think they give up 2 field goals, and I was being generous. I think that really they're only going to give up 3, and then there's going to be a late field goal, like in garbage time, maybe at some point like that. So my score prediction is 56-6 because Josh Heupel knows they have to score a ton of points. That's what I think is going to happen. Audrey thinks 53-3 Tennessee. Yep, I totally agree. Jared said 63-6. Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. They know they got to run it up. I do not think Tennessee allows UTEP into the end zone at all this week because they can't, and they know that. They have to have a dominant win. Oh, this is my favorite comment. She said, saying a quality win over Vandy is the world turned upside down. Amen, sister. Amen. But I mean, that's the way it is now, right? Like, listen, talk about an impressive statement to the playoff committee. Not only do we have to play Vanderbilt, but we have to go to Vanderbilt where both Texas and Alabama had to go play. Alabama walked out of there with a loss. Texas almost did. If we go in there and win by 20 plus, that is a massive statement. You want to talk about style points. Those are some massive style points for the committee. That's the reality of it. It's a crazy world we live in. Having to get quality wins over Vandy to impress athletic directors from across the country who are deciding our fate. Kevin said 48-10 Vols. That's a good prediction. I hope it's more than that, but that's a good prediction. Jonathan said 70-3 Vols. Sign me up. I'd love that. That'd be amazing. Zach said, what's up, everybody? Hey, good to have you, Zach. Glad you're with us, man. Tony said 59-10 Vols. I think that's a great prediction. Personally, though, I don't think that they'll let him in the end zone. I hope not, at least. But that's a good prediction. 59-10. Zach said 63-0. I think that's a great prediction. I would love for that to be the case. Mississippi Vols said 55-6. Yep. I mean, I'm saying 56-6. So you're right there with me. I think that's a great prediction. Zach said Vandy will always be the little brother. Well, I hope so. We got to prove it again on the field next weekend. But we got to take care of business this weekend first. And once again, the committee has placed every team in the country in this position. They have now admitted publicly that style points matter. Essentially, that's their second criteria, style points. Billy said, why not 70-3? I love it, man. Sign me up. I hope they do it. Forget that 80-3. Let's do that instead. I mean, let's talk about recency bias. If we go out and beat a team 80-3, that's definitely going to be in the playoff committee's mind. So let's do that. Like I said, the playoff committee are creatures of the moment. They are very heavily influenced by recency bias. So let's just go out and destroy them 80-3 and get really good vibes going in the playoff committee's mind. Greg said, is there a written document the committee is supposed to follow as it all feels? There's supposed to be set criteria that they use. The problem is the words they've used this week to explain what they valued have kind of undermine themselves a little bit. I mean, Ward Manuel admitted, he straight up admitted it's because of how Alabama played that's why the past couple of weeks after Tennessee beat them, that's why they're now ranked ahead of Tennessee. I mean, that's what he said. So forget head-to-head competition. Apparently, that's not a criteria. It's how they're playing. So we got to go win some massive games here. We got to go put some serious points on the board. I mean, like he said, yeah, 80-3, absolutely. Zach said score 100, absolutely, man. Audrey said there's supposed to be criteria, absolutely. So our basketballs are about to tip off here in just a few minutes, so we're gonna go watch them hopefully take down Virginia. I think they will. They should. Keg said, "Welcome, Keg. Good to have you." He said, "Only one bro tonight. Just getting here." Yeah. So Rustin texted me. He said he's getting home about 10:15. That his daughter was in the school play tonight, Pride and Prejudice, and so they are probably going to be getting home in about 8 minutes. So I'll probably be done by the time he gets home. Zach, thank you, buddy. He said game starts at 10:25, so we got a few minutes, so that's good. But here's the thing. To recap what all we said tonight, we got 560 people, 561 watching. Audrey said that Cam Carr and JP Estrella are both out for the game tonight. I'll be curious to see if we see Darlin Stone Dubar's debut tonight. That's what I'm waiting to find out, especially since Cam Carr is out and especially since JP Estrella is out. I really wonder if we're going to see Dubar tonight in his appearance. First appearances of all. To recap, if you're just joining us, 564 people, here are everything that people are looking at right now. The playoff committees, or not playoff, the SEC championship tiebreaker. These are the rules right here. And so head-to-head competition, that won't work because there's going to be too many teams tied head-to-head. All conference opponents are next 2, 2, and 3. Well, so if there's 5 teams tied, if Texas beats Texas A&M, there would be 5 teams all tied for second place. Unfortunately, there is not a single opponent, not one, that would be a common opponent for all 5 teams. So then we go to step 4, and that is cumulative conference winning percentages of their conference opponents. And so in that situation, here's who would get the nod. Alabama currently has the conference opponent's highest average winning percentage. So if Texas beats Texas A&M, Alabama goes to play Texas in the SEC championship game. Honestly, that's the best case scenario for Tennessee, because then if Texas beats Alabama, Alabama has 3 losses. That would probably, and Tennessee would have the head-to-head over them. That would probably knock Alabama out of the playoff. Probably would be the case. Like he said, in my opinion, the best Pride and Prejudice is the one with Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy. My wife loves Pride and Prejudice. She loves everything Jane Austen. Her favorite is there was a 1995 BBC version, I think, that she loves the most. That might be the one you're talking about. Laggy said, what role did she have? She was Miss Gardner, I think. It's Elizabeth Bennet's aunt. I think it's Miss Gardner is who she is. Bobby said, Miss Rustin, but you're doing, like he said, that's her favorite too. That's cool. Bobby said, Miss Rustin, but you're doing an awesome job. Hey, I appreciate that. He said, really enjoyed the report on the playoff committee decisions. Very thorough analysis. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Here's just for, if you're joining, we got 565 with us across all 3 platforms. I'm going to give you a crazy scenario that we discovered tonight on air. So if, this is a big if, I get that. But if everything shakes out the way we're anticipating, as higher ranked teams beat who they're supposed to, except for A&M. If Auburn beats A&M this weekend and then A&M beats Texas, that would give us a 6-way tie for first place in the SEC with all the teams having 2 losses. And this is what on air tonight, this dawned on me, and I realized as we were talking, this is why that's so crazy if that happens. Because the fourth, as you see on the screen right here, the fourth tiebreaker is, I'm going to put it back up here and go back down so you can see it again. The fourth tiebreaker is cumulative conference winning percentages of all conference opponents among the tied teams. So then it's not even up to the actual team. It's up to who they've played in the conference, how those teams have done against other conference opponents. So that it's actually taken totally out of the team's hands. That's absurd, but that's what they're doing. So if that's the case, we go back down here and look at this current standings. Here's the current conference winning percentages here of opponents. This is why that's such a bizarre rule. In that scenario, A&M would have to beat Texas to even get in a tie, for first place in the SEC. But the problem is, by beating Texas, A&M is actually hurting themselves because they would be decreasing the average conference winning percentage of their opponents on the season. And they would actually be helping Texas because then Texas's opponents, which would be A&M would be one of them who just won, their conference opponents' average winning percentage would go up, which helps Texas in the tiebreaker instead of A&M, because the head-to-head rule would already be gone by because all the teams that are tied would have all beaten each other. Okay. Because, well, no, actually, I just thought something else. Texas would have 0 losses in that, or 0 wins in that group. Everybody else would have 1. That might knock Texas out right there. Interesting. I just thought about that. So chaos, basically, it would be the bottom line there. Because everybody else in that group except Texas, Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, A&M, all of those teams would have 1 win against all the other ones. Texas would be the only one without a win. That should knock them out. So then we'd go to step 2 and 3, and that would be the conference opponent one. That wouldn't matter because there's not a common conference opponent. There is not a common conference opponent among all 5 of those teams, which then it would go to the 4th. And now we're back to what you're seeing on the screen. Then it would go back to Alabama. So essentially it's going to be the winner, assuming Texas A&M, if they beat Auburn this weekend, then it would be Alabama versus the winner of Texas and Texas A&M. That's probably what's going to happen. But if Auburn beats Texas A&M, and then A&M beats Texas, you're probably looking at an SEC championship game of Alabama and Georgia. That's probably what would happen. Interesting. Let's see here. Ryan said, I don't think they'll knock Alabama out of the playoffs if they lose the SEC championship game. Audrey said, well, they'd be a 3-loss team. Ryan said, I just don't think they drop them from them 6 to 7 spots. Maybe if they get blown out. So, Ryan, I agree with you. Using rational thinking, they should not drop 6 to 7 spots for losing in a conference championship game. But I would remind you about Georgia after Georgia lost to Ole Miss. They dropped 8 spots. They went from number 3 to 11. So it can happen. Sad, as crazy as it sounds, it could happen. Unreal, man. Unreal. What we got going on right now in college football. Go Army, beat Notre Dame. That's what we're all hoping for. If Army beats Notre Dame, Notre Dame's out. They're just out because they'd have losses to Northern Illinois, and then compounded with a loss to Army, they're gone. And so go Army, beat Notre Dame. Go Florida, beat Ole Miss. That would help Tennessee immensely. Those really honestly, those are the two games that really matter the most for Tennessee this weekend. Ryan made a good point. Fantastic. But Minnesota over Penn State would work too. I'm 99% confident that game is at Minnesota. So hopefully Minnesota pulls off the upset at home. If that happens, Penn State's out of the playoff. So those three Golden Gophers, we're all Golden Gophers fans this weekend. Now we want Florida to beat Ole Miss, and we certainly want Army to beat Notre Dame. That is the game that we all need to have our eyes on. It's probably the most likely upset this weekend. So those are the things that we need to happen as Vols fans. We need Tennessee to win by 50-something points minimum to get style points with the committee. Because like I said, that's what the committee has literally said this week is what they value. Winning in dominant fashion. Their exact words, dominant fashion. Head of the committee, quoting him, those are the two words he used. Dominant fashion. So that's what we got to have. We got to do it. I thank you all so much, all 581 of you across all three platforms who are with me right now. Thank you so much. I hope that all of you have a wonderful evening. Tennessee is about to tip off in moments from now, just a few minutes in the Bahamas against Virginia. So looking forward to seeing them play tonight. I'm very curious to see if we actually get to see Darlin Stone Dubar tonight, make his debut as a Vol with, a limited roster with Cam Carr and JP Estrella not playing. It would seem likely that we might see Dubar this evening. And so looking forward to seeing if that comes to fruition. Hope everybody has a great weekend ahead of you. Go Vols, and hopefully you join us right here Sunday night, 9:00 p.m. Eastern, as we recap, hopefully a 50-point win for the Vols over UTEP. So look forward to seeing everybody then. Next Sunday, so not this upcoming one, but the one after that, which would be December the 1st, which is really hard to believe that we're already that close to December. But that Sunday, Reed Carringer will be joining us that night to talk Tennessee's football season, look ahead at, at that point, we will know who's in the SEC championship game. And we'll talk certainly a lot about the playoff that night. So hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Hopefully see you Sunday night at 9:00 Eastern. Go Vols, baby. Go Vols.